Do we have Illeana Douglas? Is this you?
It's me. I feel like I'm a president or something. I'm in a broom closet in the Alamo Draft House in Houston.
Oh my God! What brought you to Houston, and why are you in a broom closet?
Well, it's a movie theater, so you have to talk quietly.
Yes.
And they decided this was the most quiet place for me. But I am on a book tour. I'm on a tour of all the Alamo Draft Houses. They're a movie theater chain, and they are showing Ghost World. And you buy a ticket, and you get a copy of my book, and then we're going to talk about the movie, and then do a book signing afterwards. So it's been like an Easy Rider road tour.
Wow, that is awesome. That's very exciting. Now,
fun.
Illeana Douglas, when you mention your book, you're talking about I Blame Dennis Hopper.
Yes.
A book that you wrote.
Yes.
I'm going to ask you a true or false question. True or false, the book is available in stores?
Yes, true.
Okay. True or false, they only printed a few copies, so you probably can't get one within a couple days if you don't go get it.
True. You must go immediately to either Amazon or your local bookstore, yes.
That was the right answer, because now because actually they made plenty of them, but you create the supply and demand with an answer.
Well, yes, that's true. Although every bookstore I go to locally, they seem to have run out of it, which I guess is a good sign.
I think that's a good sign. Well,
yeah.
I read the book. The book is so great.
Thank you.
It really is so amazing. And one thing that I thought of the whole time reading it is that you're clearly such a fan of movies and the history of movies, and just really getting into behind the scenes on movies. And so when you, as somebody who loves movies and books about movies, you now had to write your book about movies. Was that daunting in any way? Because you're joining this pantheon of great books written by actors or about movies, and this was your entry into that world.
Well, I've been working a lot with Turner Classic Movies and sort of curating films, talking about films with them, and it just seemed like all my life people kept saying, "Oh, you're so funny. You got to, I hope you're going to write a book and tell all these funny stories." But I didn't really know what the through line was. And then through my work at Turner Classic Movies and getting to meet people like Jerry Lewis and Richard Dreyfuss, the through line became for me, oh, you're kind of an insider outsider. You're in movies. Like, I watched movies as a kid. I was watching Richard Dreyfuss in movies or Jerry Lewis in movies. Then I grew up and I'm acting in movies with them. And then I'm also talking about their historical contribution on TCM. So I think that that's maybe my point of view in terms of the book, is that they're funny stories, but some of them are very personal. It's not because I feel like a up-close personal view of some of these people shows them in a little bit different light.
Yeah, well, that is very true, because you're not only coming at this from the point of view of an actor who built a career and ended up on different sets with you being in front of the camera. You started off, your grandfather was Melvin Douglas, the legendary actor. So as a kid, you're like, my grandfather was planting fence posts in a field. That's what your grandfather was in Being There, and you were on the set of Being There.
Yes, so it was, I was still at an age where, I had a poster. I was obsessed with the Pink Panther, and I was, loved movies, but I had a poster of Inspector Clouseau on my bedroom wall. And I didn't know that, people made movies. So going to the set of Being There and watching them actually make a movie and seeing the amount of people that it took to make the movie, that's where my love of filmmaking took hold, because I love the idea of acting in movies, but I love the whole process of making movies. Mm-hmm. And that part seemed just as exciting almost as being in the films. You know, hearing my grandfather talk about, you know, Hal Ashby as a director, or watching the actors, you know, the camaraderie of them talking. They were telling war stories the day I was on the set. So after that, then I would go home, and anytime I saw Jack Warden in a movie or Peter Sellers in a movie, I would kind of personalize it in a way that I hadn't before. They became more than, you know, just images, you know, from movie magazines. They became real human beings.
Yeah, because you actually saw that building of a thing. Because it is very surprising the first time you actually go on a set and watch how a movie or a TV show is built, because it's completely different. And I came to it more as an adult the first time I was on a set to see how things were constructed. But did that inform how you watched movies from that point on as a kid? Because you've seen things, you've been on sets and you're seeing how they're doing take after take. And B, you also you're in the family, you actually have an actor.
Yes, it did, because that was where my you know, I started developing an interest in the director, and that's when I realized, you know, my grandfather placed me to, you know, sitting next to who I didn't know, you know, Hal Ashby, and, you know, but because I knew the name Hal Ashby, then, you know, when I went home, I started putting it together. So if a movie came out and Hal Ashby directed it, then I had this context. Oh, he's the person who directed Being There. So it started more, you know, as I said, getting me more involved in the filmmaking process of it, rather than before I just loved, you know, Inspector Clouseau. I loved the movie stars. But now I started getting interested in the mechanics of making a film.
Mm-hmm. And did that, because one thing, look, I admire plenty of things about you, Illeana Douglas. Most recently is your book, I Blame Dennis Hopper. You see how I did that? I slipped it. I made it sound so
nice.
I made it sound so casual that I mentioned the name of your book. But now me talking about it makes it less slick than I maybe thought it was. But you, in addition to being an actor, you write and you direct and you've run shows and you've done all of these things. Is that experience as a kid, did that kind of did that help you get that kind of fearlessness with that and feel like there's no ceiling on where you could go with a life in entertainment?
Well, because I think, you know, I think what it gave me was that I just wanted to be in show business. Like any aspect of it seemed exciting to me. You know, watching the actors and being there was exciting. You know, but then also sitting next to the director seemed exciting too, because they were two, in a way, different worlds. And then my grandfather took me on another set, which was the movie Ghost Story. And, you know, again, it was surreal seeing Fred Astaire, somebody I just couldn't, I was like, oh my God, the guy that I've watched musicals and emulated him, and now he's here acting in a film, and, you know, Patricia Neal, John Houseman. And so it just kind of blew my mind to have them, you know, come off the screen and be these real life human beings that were imparting wisdom on me. And also because they had such respect for my grandfather, you know, they just kind of took a special interest in me and a special liking in me. So I think that it gave me a certain confidence of I think, watching a director work from a very early age. And I always just kind of found myself more comfortable, even when I was acting in a film. Most of the movies that I really had standout roles were kind of a collaboration with the director, and I didn't realize that until I got on the set of To Die For. And it solidified, and this is something I write about, like that my whole journey, that I wonder if it started with being there. Mm-hmm. And then having this, kind of a collaboration with Gus Van Sant, where the movie is essentially two movies. Like I went up first and shot the documentary section of To Die For with Gus Van Sant and a kind of a splinter crew before anybody else got there. So then
Wow,
I had,
okay.
again, my secret special partnership with him, and then we shot the narrative film. So it gave me that kind of insider-outsider feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever I do a movie, I'm one of the, few actors that I'm always, sometimes I get myself in trouble for it because people go, just act, Illeana, but I'm always thinking as the director too.
Sure.
And it's just unconscious.
Mm-hmm.
I think that, I just started to look at films critically and not just worry about my part, but worry about the whole film, and oftentimes, suggest music to people. I just have always had a natural camaraderie with the director. I would become the director's confidant. It just happened again and again and again.
But then sometimes people are just, you've had people say, and you say this in your book, where they're just kind of like, who said to you, you can just don't sit next to me? Was that Buck Henry? You can't ask me any questions?
Well, when I did To Die For, I was, everybody I work with, I'm such a movie fan, and it was like, Buck Henry, what's up, Doc? Catch-22,
Yeah.
So that's all I'm thinking through my mind.
Uh-huh.
Like, they're thinking, I wonder what's for lunch, and all I'm thinking is, how can I approach this to get him to tell me about, The Graduate? And so the first couple days, of course, he's absolutely thrilled. It's my biographer. I got to see, but by day 3, you saw me, and he looked like he had that panic look, like, where can I go? And then he said, Illeana, you can sit down, but you cannot ask me any more questions about my movies.
Yeah.
But, that's how I feel. Like, I'm acting in the movie, and I'm thrilled that people, may like me in the movie. But oftentimes I find, for me, being in the film is really just an excuse to my, my own movie fan stories of somebody like Buck Henry. And, so it's like I talk to them, and then I would run back to my journal and just write down everything they say.
Uh-huh.
So,
and did it feel like you were just these things? Some of it, did it feel like you were just because you love the stuff, and other things that you would use this down the road somewhere? Something that you had, some wisdom?
I always feel whenever I'm talking to people, and, I'm on my book tour right now, and, Jerry Lewis said to me, you aren't anybody unless they're leading you through the kitchen. And so tonight, I hit Houston, and they said, we're going to take you in the back way, and they were walking me through the kitchen, and I thought, Jerry Lewis said, so they do stay with me, and I guess that's the movie fan part of me. I've never, I've retained that kind of childlike delight in, like, I can't believe I'm here, this is incredible. And so sometimes, yes, when people say something to me, it's as if a bell goes off, and I remember it. And if I don't think I'm going to remember it, I make sure to write it down so that I will remember it, because a part of me as a film historian feels that it's important, to pass these stories on, because I just think, movies are such an art form. Mm-hmm. And we're in this day and age now where it's like we're just so close to the end of, watching movies together. And I remember what that feeling was like, being a kid and watching Jaws, 600 kids screaming, and going to a drive-in and seeing Dusk Till Dawn movies, and just how nostalgic it was. And I feel like we're just at the beginning that those days may die out. And so part of the reason I wanted to write the book was just to show how much that I felt, that movies press so many emotional buttons for me. Like, I don't remember dates, but I remember the movies or the movie stars, and somebody like Dennis Hopper with a movie like Easy Rider. One movie I really believe changed the course of filmmaking, changed America. change my family, change me. And there's many other people that feel that way too.
Yeah. Well, you really go into how it changed your family. It kicks off the book that people should read the book, I Blame Dennis Hopper. But in a nutshell, your dad sees Easy Rider and then gets super caught up in that lifestyle, and your kind of normal, relatively well-to-do or well-to-do life suddenly went out the window.
Yeah. Because I was suddenly surrounded by 20 hippies who all look like Dennis Hopper, with choppers and, a band, going to peace rallies and that's what the movie, it predicted again, this rise of the counterculture and college students, and people were so affected by that one film. By the time you get into the 80s and 90s, I think with, movies like Albert Brooks' Lost in America, we're almost kind of poking fun at it, but we forget the importance of that at the time. I mean, my parents were they were never the same after they saw that film.
Uh-huh.
You know what I mean? It shook them up. And so their values changed me. I mean, I didn't appreciate it when I was a kid, but all those kind of rebellious values have stayed with me as an adult. And I was lucky enough and privileged enough to actually get to meet Dennis Hopper and work with Dennis Hopper and be able to tell him that he changed my life. And not everybody has a chance to do that, but I feel that, so many times movies are there when we're down, or, they cheer us up. They're our friends, and we got away from, because it's so embarrassing and lately to have any feelings, any nostalgic feelings about going to the movies. But I just have so many fun memories of movies my dad took me to, movies my mom took me to. We still talk about that. Movies my grandparents took me to.
Sure.
And you would be able to talk about difficult subjects because you saw it in a movie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That was something, I remember with my parents, they'd take me to these art movies, that were we saw Amarcord. I was like, what the hell was that? What have I seen? And then, afterwards, we'd go to an ice cream shop and, they would say, did you understand that movie? Of course I didn't, but, you'd sort of pretend that you did. And,
mm-hmm.
But all those memories are important.
Sure. No, and it informs so much, and then you figure if it informs you, now you're informing, you've made so many great movies and been a part of so many things, you are spreading that, you are moving that down the line. And the book, the book, I Blame Dennis Hopper, it's really, a really great look into so many things, movie-wise and career-wise, and you weave your personal life and your love of movies together really in a really outstanding way. And you, one thing you talk about is that you actually, and I'm not going to, when you sit down across from somebody like Marlon Brando or these people who you go your whole life seeing as these icons, and then it's you see them as actual people. It's that I've always felt that that's one of the strangest things whenever you meet somebody who's been larger than life, and then they're actually in front of you, and maybe they're even shorter than you or something like that.
Right.
But you didn't want to meet Marlon Brando when you had a chance to meet him at first. No,
because it was, it just was, when I had this, opportunity, we're going to meet Marlon Brando, I just thought, no, I can't. There's just no way. He was too cinematic for me. I mean, again, I had a poster of him on my, in my wall. I remember unrolling my poster. I remember moving to my apartment and bringing my Marlon Brando poster. And, he just meant so much to me as an actor. And I just thought, how could you meet someone what could you say to Marlon Brando that's not going to come off as insipid And so I ended up being forced to meet him. But then in the context that we met him, he ended up really responding to me. Mm-hmm. And because I couldn't, he locked, I don't know, he just kind of locked eyes with me, and I just found myself getting like incredibly emotional, and I could not hold it back. So I just told him from my heart what his movies had meant to me, and next thing I knew, I was crying, and then he was crying, and it just turned into this crazy. So like everything that I was, afraid of embarrassing myself, it just ended up being a real like truth session, and he ended up getting something from me, which was like so incredible, because I think also we put these people up on a pedestal, but they've got real lives too, and we're so afraid to see something because we feel like we're going to be embarrassed or we're going to say the wrong thing. And I feel sometimes like if you just speak from the heart, you're going to be okay. People will sense that their movies have really meant something to them. And I try to articulate that because I think that each day goes by and we're forgetting about Marlon Brando. We remember the scandals or that he was overweight, but we forget the impact that he made as an actor. Mm-hmm. And those are all the things that I was trying to write about in terms of my meeting with him, as I felt as if I saw a side of him as as a man before fame had maybe, destroyed the best part of him. But his movies will be there, forever.
Sure.
But I feel a certain responsibility to be able to communicate that and articulate that as a film lover.
Sure. Well, as somebody who you clearly love movies so much and you take it seriously, I think your book does justice to what you believe in. So you did such a great job. It's a really great book.
Thank you.
And I'll let you get back to your screening, and I'll let you get out of a broom closet. And thank you, Illeana, for making the time and calling in and telling us about the book. And people should check it out. I Blame Dennis Hopper. Now,
okay.
One question I do want to ask you. On the set of Ghost Story, the guy who screens calls for me wants to ask this question.
Yes.
He wants to know what the craft service table was like. He thinks there was probably a fair amount of hard candy on it.
You mean for older gentlemen?
Yes, because they would have a lot of Werthers, is what he's guessing.
No, I have to tell you about that movie because, all the gentlemen were in their 80s, and all three gentlemen, Douglas Fairbanks, my grandfather, and Fred Astaire, all developed pneumonia because they kept making them shoot these scenes, out in the snow. Mm-hmm. And, they never complained about it. I couldn't believe, these huge stars. And, again, it was such a learning lesson.
We're getting dragged. Oh, yeah. And the other guy who works here wants me to ask you about, he's a big ride enthusiast, and he wanted me to ask you about the Aerosmith Rockin' Roller Coaster.
Oh, it could possibly be, my favorite thing I've ever done. Sometimes people will come up to me and, I try to guess, is it going to be Cape Fear? Is it going to be Stir of Echoes? Yeah. Is it going to be action?
Or the Aerosmith Rockin' Roller Coaster.
And sometimes it's the Aerosmith, and they go, do you have a super stretch? Make it a super stretch.
And for people who don't know, where is this ride?
It's in Florida.
Okay.
It's in Florida.
Okay.
And we got to go down there, and I'm from Massachusetts, so it was a great thrill to work with Aerosmith.
So you were you host the ride with them or something? Is that what it is?
Yes, it's a little movie that is. I think you can even watch it on YouTube. It's a little movie that you see before the ride begins, and I play Aerosmith's manager.
Okay, so you see, Illeana, I want to ask all about being there and All these good movies. I got one guy asking me about the craft service table for Ghost Story. The other guy's asking about the Aerosmith rock and roller coaster. I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure what to do here with this, with my team. I think we have to have a meeting after the show. This seems like we need a post-show, meeting to all get on the same page.
Yes, I'll you can see all three of those. I'll try to comment on all three of these post-show.
Okay.
Send a memo.
Thank you. Well, Illeana, thank you again for calling in. The Illeana Douglas, the book is I Blame Dennis Hopper. It's really great, and thank you for taking the time out.
Thanks so much. Have a good night.
You too. I'll talk to you soon. Okay.
Bye.
All right, bye.